Hello, hi, salve, buongiorno, or buonasera, depending on where everybody is. My name is Michelle DePretti. As I'm sure you know by now, I'm a wedding planner, restaurateur, equestrian, wife, daughter, and a whole bunch of other things. I wear a lot of hats. And on today's episode here in my little corner of the YouTube, as I like to call it, we are talking to my husband, photographer, Collin Pierson of Collin Pierson Photography. Hello, Collin.
Hello.
And we're going to discuss a whole range of really fun topics that include working together with your spouse, maybe how we met, and some tips because, you know, Collin is, in addition to my being a destination wedding planner, Collin's obviously a destination wedding photographer. And while we do work together a lot, we also work separately. So a little tips, some travel tips, some destination wedding tips, and just a whole bunch of good stuff today. So if you're ready, we can dive in.
I'm ready.
Andiamo. Okay. So, why don't you give everybody a little bit of background and tell them who you are?
Hi, my name's Collin Pierson. I am a photographer based in Chicago, Palm Beach, and really anywhere that somebody will send me. I shoot destination weddings and bridal fashion, and I also help manage Gina and Giorgetti restaurant. What's
a favorite destination that you've worked in?
Definitely, I would say Southern Italy has been really, really fun to explore. Southern Italy, such as Sicily and Puglia, are places that have an aesthetic that's very different than what you would typically see in Lake Como or in Tuscany. And the light is actually different there. And it's been really, really invigorating to spend some time photographing in those places. Yeah.
Having a wife that's a wedding planner, which you obviously did not always have throughout your career. So we've been together almost 10 years now. What has changed for you being married to a planner? Not so much working with me, but let's start there. What have you learned being married to a planner that you take into work as a photographer?
One of the big things is planning is not necessarily just about timelines and pretty things. It's about logistics and making the experience for guests as well as your clients absolutely fantastic is really based on the flow of a wedding day versus just the napkins or the confetti or whatever it may be. The logistics actually create the ease of walking through that day and the ease of a bride or a groom having no stress going through their day.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting that you say that too, because like from my standpoint, now being married to a photographer, what I've learned is the importance of allowing for pockets of time so that the images, the moments are always properly captured.
Yes.
Right, working alongside you and being married to you and seeing how you edit and your process and sort of what you stress about in weddings in general, if there's not enough time for a first look or there isn't a first look, and how are you going to get those images so that the client always feels they're getting the full value of the investment and they're also getting the memories, right? Because that's really what you do. And Philippe and I were actually talking about this the other day, and one of the things that I love is, and Andrea Eppolito coined this, so I take no credit, I'm definitely quoting Andrea, but she said, you know, when we plan, we are giving our couple something to look forward to. And that's very much something I'm involved in, right? The planning, the logistics, laying down that foundation. Then the wedding comes, and on the day of, you photograph all of these moments, and those images become the tangible thing upon which they can look back on for, you know, the rest of their lives. So that was something I certainly learned. But we still haven't talked about what it's like to actually be married to married to one another in the industry, right? So plus, we can go to industry events together.
Yes, there is an efficiency and potential cost savings in that.
Or it's nice to have the company and not have to walk into a room by ourselves.
Yes.
Efficiency and cost savings. Anyway, whatever. But okay, yes, efficiency. Plus, we can always bounce ideas off one another with the understanding that we get, like, we both work on weekends. We understand, like, we both take Mondays off whenever we can, right? So our schedules align, which means we don't necessarily have discrepancies related to, I have a 9 to 5 and you have a Thursday through Sunday, right? So that's a plus. Minus, sometimes you're working a wedding in Switzerland and I'm working a wedding in Palm Beach and we don't see each other for a very long time.
Yes.
Right? Definitely negative. What does your day look like on any given day?
I'm going to be editing photos. I'm going to be working on something related to a menu or God knows what. And also still trying to maintain and run my own business, client communication, gallery delivery, all those different components as well.
We also speak hospitality.
Yes.
So coming from a restaurant background, I think something that sets us apart. The language for sure, like speaking Italian, you know, I majored in it in college. I've spoken it most of my life. You have spoken it very well for several years now. You make a huge effort to do that, which is amazing, especially for my family that speak no English. But I think one of the things that separates us when we work together is sort of that hospitality knowledge. So the fact that we are working on menus for the restaurant, we do know food and beverage intrinsically, like really well.
Yes.
We understand HR, we understand team building, all of those things, communicating to a team, being accountable to other things, I think helps us be better at our job. And I think helps us be better part of a team when we're dropping into like a vendor dream team for a couple. So I think that's a huge thing.
1,000%.
For sure. And I also think something that's worth talking about when we talk about what separates us, your photography style. So something I love is that you have this, and I love this in general about photography. So I tend to be drawn to work with photographers and video film people that have this very timeless quality to what they do. So it isn't necessarily interrupted by filters or a fleeting trend or some new thing that's been going on. So talk to me a little bit about your photography style in your own words.
I think, you know, when you look at my body of work, it's really about communicating a story, and when you add a level of distraction, whether it be, like you said, filters or a trend, it kind of takes away from it at the end of the day. Okay. Because think about like your Aunt Mary's wedding from 1986. The poofy sleeves, the pink dress, the big hair.
I'm an 80s girl, so I'm all for it.
Right. So that's great and all, but that style is so dated.
Right, it's not necessarily timeless.
It's not necessarily timeless. And so when you incorporate architecture or some sort of color element or texture element to create a photo that is actually art, what you're doing is you're actually adding more time to that photo in a way.
Okay.
You're adding an ability for a piece that goes on a wall to live there and truly be a piece of work or of art. Okay. Versus just like, oh, please stare into the camera and, you know, like nuzzle your noses together. So
that being said, talk to me, because something you get a lot, something I hear a lot, I think industry-wide, and if your couples out there watching, this is really important. People all the time will be like, I don't really want a photographer that like poses us. I don't want to be like posed. I want like basically like candid moments throughout the day. Yeah. But they don't really, right? They want a combination of the two. So talk about that a little bit.
So this was something that I figured out a long time ago. The reality is that great posed images don't actually look posed.
Right.
And
that's the secret.
And like if you incorporate some laughter and some humor and just distract somebody's brain from the fact that there's this big white lens staring right at you, you know, that completely changes the mindset, and the psychology of it is so immense and so important that I actually think that there's no other way to do it.
Well, and something I love that you do that I don't see with every photographer, and I miss when it's not there, is direction, right? Yeah. So one of the things I like, drop your shoulder, or look a little this way. Right. So like, because I have always been self-conscious about how I photograph and how I look in a photograph, right? You're quintessential female, like I wanna look skinny in every photo, right? So you have taught me kind of how to optimize like posture, you know, dropping one hip, making sure my shoulders are away from my ears, like little tips and tricks. And I've seen you on wedding days take people who are extremely photogenic, extremely uncomfortable in front of a camera, and everything in between on the spectrum, and really draw out these beautiful moments that perfectly flatter and perfectly complement the candid moments that you and your team also catch, right? Because candid moments are great, and when those are born sort of whatever, perfect.
But you're not going to necessarily blow that up and put it big on your wall, or make it the cover of your wedding album, or you're not, those intimate moments, you're not going to blast all over Facebook and do the humble brag.
Well, and not only that, those moments won't necessarily get you published. So again, if you're also a wedding couple who's looking to have your wedding featured, because we get asked that a lot, right? And we were just having a conversation today with a really important editor. And one of the things she was saying was she wished there was more education out there for couples and for vendors to understand how to properly submit a wedding, what they look for with submissions, right? And something important to remember is if you're interested in being in Brides, Vogue, Modern Luxury Weddings, Chicago, Destination I Do, Weddings Magazine, whatever the case is, Green Wedding Shoes, all of the myriad of ways you can be published, something really important is they look for a combination of photos of the couple, right? Really beautiful, editorially inspired photos, candid moments that show the emotion of the day, and then detail shots, which we haven't even talked about. Decor photography is huge, right? For us in the industry, you provide me the tangible proof to show to people what I do. We make beautiful celebrations. Right. I can never prove what a timeline does, right? But I can show the pretty, and you help everybody in the industry do that. Photo and video are huge for that, right?